All right, good evening, everybody. Ben Jones here. It is Tuesday night, July 1st. 9 o'clock, a little chat about the weather we have going on out there tonight and what we could possibly see as we go through the rest of tonight. Let us start. First, you just saw the big picture there. Here is a look at the close-up radar. Just some light rain going on in most spots where you see the light green, obviously just sprinkles. The yellow is going to be a little bit of a steadier rain, but we're really not seeing much of anything out there. There have been storms dancing around us, and some of the storms back toward the north and west have been severe at times this evening into tonight. The one that is coming out of Atlanta, heading toward between Covington and McDonough right there, that has a special weather statement on it, but nothing severe with that. Just means keep an eye on it, maybe some gusty winds there. We roll on down. Jasper into Putnam earlier. That was a storm that was severe for Butts and Jasper, and then it kind of fell apart, and so now it's just sprinkles there. So we roll on down. Upson County with a little bit of rain there. Same thing as we get on into Taylor County, just sprinkles for parts of East Bibb into Twiggs and Houston. Dodge County has probably the steadiest rain that we're seeing for now. Coming in out of Wilcox, moving toward the northeast there. And this, in the red, obviously showing where some steadier rain is, and that's kind of weakening down. So I'm not so sure there's going to be much left by the time it gets into Lawrence County, but we'll see how it goes. All right, so that's that. If we roll on back toward the west, you can see storms that have been going through Alabama, continuing down toward Dothan there. How about up north? You know, what's up must come down, right? So we're seeing stuff developing up that way. Mainly just regular old rain with a few rumbles in there. Mainly the stuff that we would be looking for is a storm like this one that's been coming in out of Atlanta if it holds together. So again, I'm not anticipating some sort of a big severe weather event tonight. The potential for what we're seeing now, just an isolated shower storm, is definitely in play. And as we look at the big picture, you will see that the low end level 1 that was originally out there for tonight, I believe it was more up here, then if I remember right, kind of cut through here like this. Well, the top part has been taken out because those rougher storms are out of that area, and then it was kind of dragged down a little farther into our neck of the woods here. So that just means that any of these that come through could have some gusty winds or maybe some hail, but they're having a hard time holding together, with the exception of that one, as I mentioned, that's coming in out of Atlanta toward the south and east. Let's go to, there's a storm outlook again. Let's go to the last graph model that was out. A new one will be coming out in a little over an hour. And it shows really that things kind of feather out, and that's probably it as we go through tonight. Tomorrow afternoon, somewhere at 2, 3 o'clock, usually with the heat of the day, we'll fire up a couple other little isolated showers, maybe a rumble or two. This is around 5 or 6. Again, just notice these little blips that are out there. Probably not a big deal. There could be 1 or 2 that have some gusty winds. This is around 8 or 9 o'clock tomorrow night, 11 o'clock to midnight. And then once you lose the heat of the day, you lose the storms. This will take us into Thursday afternoon, and the same plan is in play. And that is, again, isolated pop-up showers and storms. Kind of hanging around into the evening perhaps, if they're still going, and then at some point later Thursday night falling apart. This takes us into Friday afternoon around flare-up time, around 2 in the afternoon, but we don't see much happening just yet. And I'm not so sure we're going to see a whole lot Friday. You can see here on the long-range models for the 2, 3, 4 o'clock hours for the 4th, not showing much of anything. So, as we've been mentioning this week, we're going to transition more into a smaller rain chance by the time we get into the 4th and this weekend, but also more heat. So mid-90s will start to build on in. As we go into Sunday, again, most of the action probably to our south and east. And then as we head into next week, just hit or miss stuff. You just see little green blobs. Really, the GFS, only one really showing much of anything. Let's talk about the numbers. Tomorrow morning, we'll say low 70s. Tomorrow afternoon, we'll bring it back up. We'll say around 90. There could be some numbers a little bit north of that. As we head into Thursday morning, back down around 70 or so, maybe some low 70s. And then for Thursday afternoon, probably looking at low 90s. This will take us into Friday morning, where we're looking at low 70s. And by Friday afternoon, now we're starting to kind of cook with gas a little bit here. And we could be starting to pull into some mid 90s as we go into the 4th. And again, all these things go hand in hand. If you're not going to see much in the way of rain, you're going to see more heat. So kind of one pattern or the other. And then as we head into the weekend, we're going to kind of keep the trend going. Now, what you see here on the 7-day is actually a little bit toned down from what some of the models were showing. I was looking at some over here right now from, let's see, once we get into about Monday of next week, there's some models, actually the European model, puts us starting Monday up through for about a week of over 100 degrees. So, didn't want to put that there. So I'm going with mid-90s, and hopefully that'll cover the bases once we get into next week. We'll see how it actually plays out. All right, so let's go back to the radar and circle the wagons once again if you're just joining us. Storm potential is there tonight, just not a lot. We do have storms still trying to hold together to our north and west, but not doing a great job of it. That one that's been leaving Atlanta up here, this is the main one that I've been watching, has really been weakening down. There was some hail with it earlier, I noticed, and a little bit of gusty wind in there. There was no severe thunderstorm warning recently for this. A special weather statement has been out, which just means, again, keep an eye on it in case the wind gets a little bit heavier or maybe some hail, but it looks to be weakening. More storms. The reason I'm showing you all this in North Georgia, again, any of this that does develop could maybe hold together for later on tonight, although it's looking kind of doubtful, but we're not going to totally rule it out that we could see some rain, maybe a rumble of thunder in a couple of spots. And again, I'll add it onto the board here, the outlook for tonight. Level 1 is out. Again, that's the lowest on the scale of 1 to 5. So that just means that any of these could have couple of rumbles of thunder in there, obviously, because there'd be thunderstorms, but also some gusty winds, maybe some hail. But again, more and more, this is looking like just light rain as we're kind of working the atmosphere over. As a matter of fact, we'll take a look at some of the current numbers. There's been some rain, cooled air, and then just outflow boundaries, meaning the breeze coming out of some of these thunderstorms has knocked the numbers down some. So we're looking at mainly 70s, but in some of the untouched areas where we haven't seen much in the way of rain, we are still seeing some low 80s on the board. But as far as the feels like numbers, not bad. Milledgeville at 87, Sandersville, same thing, 86, 87 there, Wrightsville and Dublin. But you can see definitely the farther west you go where the rain cooled air has done its thing and knocked some of the numbers down. So, Eastman, again, Dodge County, one of the places seeing the only steady rain for now, and really that's starting to turn into just sprinkles too, as that one kind of shreds apart. So again, the storms are having a hard time staying up and going, which is a good thing because we don't want to see severe weather with any of this. So it's mainly just garden variety thunderstorms that'll rumble for a little while, and then we'll start to see them kind of weaken down, and we'll go more into a kind of a light rain or sprinkle situation. We can check the high res model, see if it's picking up on some of this. Let's go forward with it. And notice that same kind of trend, 11 o'clock to midnight, weakening down. If you look toward the top up there, you can see some of the stuff that's developing in North Georgia now trying to hold together, but it looks like it's not going to be able to hang. So I would expect a lot of this as we go through the next couple hours to really just kind of feather out into not much of anything. And then, as I said, we'll revisit it again tomorrow afternoon into the evening, on into later tomorrow night. Could get an isolated shower storm in a couple of spots. Again, we're not in any sort of risk category for tomorrow, but anytime during the summertime we watch for the potential maybe some gusty wind or hail and some of that. But for the most part tonight, unless you see a little bit of a lightning flash off in the distance somewhere, most areas probably won't see much. We'll talk again for the 10 o'clock show on our CW channel, and we'll do it on 13 WMAZ Plus, and then of course the 11 o'clock show on the way after that. And we'll see you then. Thanks for joining us.